Hello and welcome back to the Core Learning channel. Today we're going to be looking at completing the square as part of factorizing quadratics. So what is completing the square? Well, we remember from our other videos on quadratic equations and the quadratic formula that sometimes when we get a quadratic equation in this standard format, we need to factorize it to solve for x. Now, as I said, we have looked at basic factorization, which means putting this equation into two brackets. We've also looked at the quadratic formula. One of the other methods we have available to us is called completing the square. And completing the square basically works like this. So we have the equation in the form x squared plus, and for the purposes of simplicity, I've just said 2bx plus c. And what I'm hypothesizing is that we can write this as x plus half of b, which in this case is just b, squared, plus this term y, which we're going to need to find out. So generally, if we have an equation that doesn't factorize easy, this is one of the methods alongside the quadratic formula that we have available to us. So how do we go about actually solving this then? So the first thing to look at is, do we have a term in front of the x squared? So when we're looking to complete the square, we need to make sure that there's no term in front of the x squared. So if we have a times x squared plus 2abx plus ac, what we're going to do is we want to divide through by a. Now for simplicity, I've multiplied each term by a, so it comes out as a nice quadratic equation. But if it was just ax squared plus 2bx plus c, we'd divide the whole thing by a. So we have this first term as just x squared. So now that we've done that, we're going to write out the quadratic equation in the completing the square form. So as I said, this is when we have x squared plus 2bx plus c, we can write this as x plus b squared plus y. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this right hand side and we're going to expand the bracket. So what happens when we expand this bracket? Well, we're going to get x squared plus bx plus bx plus b squared, which simplified is x squared plus 2bx plus b squared. Now, you'll notice that this is fairly similar to the original equation we had after we divided through by a. The only difference are these last two terms. So originally we had plus c at the end, and now we've got plus b squared. So what we can do is we can say, once we factor this plus y term back on at the end, so you can see on the right hand side, we've expanded out the bracket and now we've added that y term on at the end. So what we can say is, well, by comparing these two equations, you can see the x squared terms cancel out, the plus 2bx terms cancel out, and we're left with that c is equal to b squared plus y. So what we now need to do is find out what this y term is. And to do this, we can simply rearrange. So we have that y is equal to c minus b squared. And obviously when you have a question, you'll know the values of c and b squared, so you'll get a value from this. So now that we've done this, we can write out the equation in the completing the square form with our value of y attached. So for instance, if we found out that y was equal to 3, we'd have that x squared plus 2bx plus c equals x plus b squared plus 3. So we now have that x plus b squared minus, x plus b squared equals minus y, because we're going to be solving when it is equal to 0. So if we had x plus b squared plus y equals 0, we simply move the y term to the right hand side. Once we've done this, we now can take the square root of both sides, and we're going to have x plus b equals plus or minus the square root of minus y. And I'll just say, in case anyone's wondering, I've written the square root of minus y. You might be thinking, is it possible to take the square root of a minus number? Generally, the way this is going to work out is that the minus y is actually going to be a positive term. So don't worry about that for now. It will make more sense when we come to some examples. So now to solve for x, the last step is to move this b term across. So we're going to have that x is equal to plus or minus the square root of y, the square root of minus y, minus b. So our two answers for x are going to be plus the square root of minus y minus b, and minus the square root of minus y minus b. So now that we've gone through the methodology, I think it's a good chance to jump into some examples. So the first example we're going to look at is to solve x squared plus 4x plus 1 equal to 0. We want to solve this for x. So the first thing we're going to notice, if we try and solve this using basic factorization, where we try and put this into two brackets, it's not going to give us a nice answer, and it's certainly going to be very tricky to do. So this is quite a good candidate for completing the square. So our first step is going to be to look at the term before the x squared. What we notice here is that that term is just 1, so we don't have to divide through. We can just keep it as it is. So we want to write this in completing the square form. So what we do is we're going to write out our square bracket to start, and it's going to be x plus and then half the value of the x term. So in this case, the x term is 4, so half of 4 is 2. So we have x plus 2 squared plus y. And now we want to find out what y is. So if we expand this x plus 2 squared bracket, this gives us x squared plus 4x plus 4. So if we now write out in step 1 the right hand side, well, that bracket is x squared plus 4x plus 4, and then we have that plus y term on the end, and we're saying that that is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 1. So we need to work out the value of y that makes those two equations true. So we can see again that we can cancel out the x squared and the x term, and we're just left with 1 is equal to 4 plus y. We can rearrange that, and we get that y is equal to 1 minus 4, which is minus 3. So we can say that the original equation, the original quadratic, x squared plus 4x plus 1, is equal to x plus 2 squared minus 3. So now what we want to do is rearrange this to isolate x by itself. So first of all, we're going to move the y term, this minus 3, to the right hand side. So we have x plus 2 squared is equal to 3. We now take the square root of both sides, and we get that x plus 2 is equal to plus or minus root 3. And now we're going to move the 2 across, and we get x equal to plus or minus root 3 minus 2. Let's move on to our second example. Here we have x squared plus 6x plus 7 equals 0. So again, we don't have a number in front of the x squared term, so we can move straight into the first step, which is to put this quadratic into completing the square form. So we put the x plus half of the x term, which is half of 6, which is 3. So we have x plus 3 squared plus y. If we expand this bracket, this gives us x squared plus 6x plus 9. And so we have the original quadratic is equal to this expanded bracket, x squared plus 6x plus 9, plus this y term on the end. The first two terms on both sides cancel out, so the x squared term and the x term both cancel out. And we're left with 7 is equal to 9 plus y. We rearrange this, and we get that y is equal to 7 minus 9, which is minus 2. And so we can say our original quadratic is equal to x plus 3 squared minus 2. Now we're going to rearrange to find x, so we move the minus 2 term to the other side, and we get x plus 3 squared equals 2. We're going to take the square root of both sides, and we get that x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 2. And we move the 3 across to get that the solutions for x in this particular example are plus or minus the square root of 2 minus 3. Now we have our third example. So we have 3x squared plus 12x plus 6 equals 0. Now for this one, we can see that we do actually have a term in front of the x squared. So our first step in this particular case is going to be to get this into the form that we want to start looking at completing the square. So to do this, well, we have a 3 in front of the x squared term, so we need to divide through by 3. When we do this, we get x squared plus 4x plus 2. And now it's in this form, we can actually use completing the square form. So we're going to write out this bracket, which is half of the x term. So this is half of 4, which is 2. So we have x plus 2 squared plus y. If we expand this bracket, we get x squared plus 4x plus 4. So if we rewrite step 2 with the bracket expanded, this gives us x squared plus 4x plus 2 equals x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus y. So if we look at this equation, if we look at the equations in step 4, we can see that the x squared term cancels out and the 4x term cancels out, and we're left with 2 is equal to 4 plus y. We can rearrange this to get that y is equal to 2 minus 4, which is minus 2. So when we rewrite out our equation, we have that x squared plus 4x plus 2, which is our original equation, is equal to x plus 2 squared minus 2. And again, we're going to now rearrange. So we have x plus 2 squared equals 2. Just remember, this is because when I say x squared plus 4x plus 2 equals x plus 2 squared minus 2, all of this is also equal to 0. So when we move this across, we have x plus 2 squared equals 2. Take the square root of both sides, and we get x plus 2 equals plus or minus root 2. And then we isolate x to get plus or minus root 2 minus 2. So hopefully now you've seen some examples, you're ready to have a go at a few practice questions. So the first question we have is to solve x squared plus 8x minus 7 equal to 0. Pause the video when you're ready to answer the question, and unpause it when you want to go through the answer. So hopefully you've had enough time and you feel confident that you've got the answer. Our first step in this case is that we notice there is no term in front of the x squared, so we can simply proceed to writing this out in completing the square format. So we have x squared plus 8x minus 7 is equal to x plus 4 squared plus y. So obviously this term in the bracket has to be half of the x term. So now we need to find what y is equal to. So if we expand this bracket, we get x plus 4 squared equals x squared plus 8x plus 16. So if we plug this back into the right hand side in step 1, we get x squared plus 8x minus 7 is equal to x squared plus 8x plus 16 plus y. We can cancel out these terms and we get minus 7 equals 16 plus y. We rearrange this to get y, and y is going to equal minus 7 minus 16, which is minus 23. So we can, in completing the square form, x squared plus 8x minus 7 equals x plus 4 squared minus 23. We rearrange this to get x plus 4 squared equals 23. And we can take the square root of both sides to get x plus 4 equals plus or minus root 23. Therefore, the solutions for x are plus or minus root 23 minus 3. So question 2 here, we have solve for x squared plus 10x plus 5 equals 0. So pause the video, have a go at the question, and unpause the video when you're ready to hear the answer. So the first thing to notice on this question is that we have no number term in front of the x squared again. So we can jump straight into the first step, which is to write this in completing the square format. So we have our quadratic expression here is equal to x plus 5 squared plus y. If we expand out this bracket, we get x squared plus 10x plus 25, which if we substitute this into the right hand side in step 1, we get our original quadratic is equal to x squared plus 10x plus 25 plus y. So these terms cancel out, and we get that y is equal to 5 minus 25, which is minus 20. So this tells us that our original expression is equal to x plus 5 squared minus 20 in completing the square format. And this is all equal to 0, remember. So using that, we now just need to solve for x. So when we do this, we get that x is equal to plus or minus root 20 minus 5. So the next question we have is to solve 5x squared plus 20x minus 5 equals 0. So again, pause the video and unpause it when you're ready to run through the answer. So here we notice this is slightly different to the previous two questions. We have a 5 in front of the x squared. So the first thing we need to do is divide through by 5 to get this into a format where we can complete the square. So to do this, we're going to divide through by 5. And when we do this, we get x squared plus 4x minus 1. I have realized that that says divide by 3. It is meant to be divide by 5. So now that we've done this, we can just follow the previous steps we had. So we're going to write out our completing the square form, which in this case is going to be x plus 2 squared plus y. When we do this, we're going to get that x plus 2 squared equals x squared plus 4x plus 4. If we substitute this back into step 2, we're going to get that the original expression is equal to x squared plus 4x plus 4 plus y. So now we can now use this to find the value of y by cancelling out these like terms. So we get that minus 1 is equal to 4 plus y, which says that y is equal to minus 1 minus 4, which is minus 5. So this original expression in completing the square form is x plus 2 squared minus 5. And now when we rearrange to isolate x, we're going to get that x is equal to plus or minus root 5 minus 2. So this is the last question. We have 2x squared plus 16x plus 6 equals 0. You know the drill, pause the video and come back when you want to hear the answer. So again, for this question, our first step is going to be to get this into a form where we can complete the square. So we need to divide through by 2. So when we do this, we have x squared plus 8x plus 3. Now we can complete the square on this equation. So we're going to get that that is equal to x plus 4 squared plus y. So we're going to expand the bracket. When we expand the bracket and then put this back into the right hand side in step 2, we get that x squared plus 8x plus 3 equals x squared plus 8x plus 16 plus y. Those terms cancel out, so we're left with 3 equals 16 plus y, which means that y is equal to 3 minus 16, which is minus 13. So our original expression in completing the square form is x plus 4 squared minus 13, which is equal to 0. So solving for x, we get that x is equal to plus or minus root 13 minus 4. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video and learnt something today. If anything is unclear or you have any questions, leave a comment and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.